You say that at the moment England's problems are many: mass immigration, crime, unemployment, large state and government interference, rejection of merit, failing universities, poor education, laziness, entitlement, lack of confidence, rejection of personal responsibility, lack of morality, lack of patriotism, lack of self-respect, national debt, welfare, dependency, abortion, career politicians, poor parenting, and weak men.
Who in their right mind could be sent to jail for a tweet? Some tweets may need punishing because you crossed the line, but I can never envisage a tweet that should send someone to jail.
And I'm delighted to welcome back to Outspoken today Nick Buckley, the author of the new book, England, My England. And Nick, just before I brought you in, I wanted to read out something that you have written in terms of your prospectus, I guess, for this book. You say that at the moment, England's problems are many: mass immigration, crime, unemployment, large state and government interference, rejection of merit, failing universities, poor education, laziness, entitlement, lack of confidence, rejection of personal responsibility, lack of morality, lack of patriotism, lack of self-respect, national debt, welfare, dependency, abortion, career politicians, poor parenting, and weak men. But you say patriotism is the way that England can be saved.
Absolutely. I mean, you just read that list, and reading that slightly depressed me. So I apologize for
You
coming up
wrote
with that
it.
list in the first. I know. What we need to do is find our love again of this country. And that isn't to the exclusion of other people, and that's not to victimize and see other people as evil as the problem. Since the Second World War, whatever happened, we started to dislike our own country. How can you live in a family where you dislike your family, you dislike your children? That isn't a healthy environment to grow up in and to live in and to support and to love and to be there for. But that's what we've done to this country. The increase, the state's getting bigger, and all we do now is we look at the state all the time to fix our problems. And that in itself is the problem of this country. We're slowly turning into a socialist state.
You also say, Nick Buckley, that the word racist now simply means a white working class patriot. And isn't one of the problems, Nick, that people are too scared to speak up, especially when they see the sorts of punishments being dished out? And look, I'll just stress again, I'm completely against all forms of violence, Nick. I've always been clear about that. It doesn't matter who's protesting, whether it's the pro-Hamas mob or Just Stop Oil or the so-called Southport rioters. I am against all violence. But Nick, a lot of these people were not violent and ended up behind bars. Some people ended up behind bars just for sending a tweet or making a Facebook post, like Lucy Connolly or Julie Sweeney, because they were so horrified by what happened. And then you've got the guy today getting 9 years. And it does feel like there is a particular attempt to shut the white working class patriots up with exorbitantly ridiculous prison sentences.
This has been going, I talk about this in the book, but this has been going on all my life. Keir Starmer has just ramped it up to the next stage. 14 years of Tories were bad. New Labour was bad. My childhood in the 70s was all bad. As in, anything you said that people didn't like, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're homophobe. And those words were powerful words, but over time they've diminished now. And there was a bomb on my street 7 years ago, and that bomb on my street in Manchester city centre killed 22 people when the Manchester Arena blew up. And what did the people do? We all came out and we all sang "Don't Look Back in Anger." And then 7 years later, you've talked about it earlier in the show, we had the Southport atrocity where three little girls got stabbed to death. At that point, then the people had had enough. And being called a racist and a fascist and a Nazi doesn't do it anymore now. And Keir Starmer, in his ivory tower, looked upon the anger of the people and he said to himself, this could go the wrong way for me. I could be strung up by a piano wire for this because it's happened before. So he came down hard on the people
Mm-hmm.
because the powerful words don't work anymore now. Who in their right mind could be sent to jail for a tweet? Some tweets may need punishing because you've crossed the line, but I can never envisage a tweet that should send someone to jail. But believe, and I write about this in the book, it's a hard time at the moment, and Keir Starmer has got a lead fist coming down on us, but that's because he's afraid. He's afraid of the people turning, and this is the last resort of all dictators to come down hard. The people have had enough. The people have seen through all the smoke screens and all the lies and all the propaganda, and the people now want to reclaim this country. And my book is about encouraging them to do that and encouraging them to be a bit braver, a bit more courageous, and be sensible and don't get sent to jail if you can help it. But the days of doing nothing, they're over.
So, what is the solution?
The last chapter of the book, I discussed that because there's no point in writing a book about the problems and then giving nobody any tips or help to go forward. So the last chapter in the book is about the resurrection of the English. And there's many things we can do. And I aim at it as an individual. There's no point me telling people to set up political parties and demonstration groups and go protesting because an individual can't do that by themselves. So my theory is if we can encourage individual English men and individual English women to be braver, to take on personal responsibility and not to be afraid and speak their mind, because when they speak their mind and they show the world around them that they're not afraid, that gives courage to other people. And then they're slightly less afraid and they'll speak their mind. And believe me, courageous is, what's the word I'm looking for? You can catch it. It's contagious. You can catch it. And next thing you know, more and more people will not be afraid of the government. So speak your mind, be sensible. Tell your friends your points of view, your political points of view. You're sat in the pub with your friends and someone's talking about the LGBTQ madness. You just say, I'm not into that because it leads to child abuse. That's why I'm not into it. When someone calls you racist, just go, well, if that's what you think. But I know for a fact the people who ran the transatlantic slave trade were actually your descendants. They were Black Africans. So stick up for yourself, stick up for the country in a sensible manner, and that will breed courage and bravery. But we've been in worse situations than this before. That's what I keep telling people. This seems bad because we're living through it. But the Spanish Armada was off the coast 3 times. Napoleon was waiting for a nice day to invade. Nazi Germany almost invaded. I lived through the 1970s when we had power cuts every day. My house was full of candles. Bodies weren't being buried. We've been through worse and we will get through this. All we're missing at the moment is a hero. And we don't know who that hero is.
Okay,
and
well,
it could
that's
be you.
interesting you raised that, Nick, because that was just on my mind. Because as far as I can see it on the right, there seem to be 2 competing heroic forces at the moment, or at least people whose supporters view them as heroes. The first is Nigel Farage and Reform UK, and the second is Tommy Robinson and the Uniting the Kingdom movement. Now, of course, Tommy Robinson is currently behind bars. He's considered completely unpalatable by the establishment, unpalatable by the mainstream media, who want to erase this guy from society and try and lock him up. Nigel, on the other hand, has decided he's going to almost veer towards the mainstream as a way to take over the establishment and finally smash the 2-party system. Do you think Farage or Robinson could be the heroes, one or both, or are we looking for someone else?
Until the hero becomes the hero. We never know who that person is. It could be either of them, but more likely it'll be neither of them. I'm at the opinion the hero that's going to save us, we do not know their name yet. They're out there and they're working towards it. And there may be a backbench politician, there may be someone who's joining a party right now or setting up a new party. The hero is there. I don't think we've heard of them yet. But if Farage and Tommy Robinson united, and I don't mean in a a special deal, I'm just talking about if one of those two people could pull the other one towards them in some grand coalition. That's what Trump's done. He's created a grand coalition
Yes,
of people who
exactly.
may not like him and may not agree with all his policies. But if he said to, the Tommy Robinson supporters that you guys are welcome because we're going to have one of your people as a spokesperson for these issues. And we're going to get someone who believes in saving the environment, but is not a nutcase to do this, and start pulling intelligent, clever people together and build a grand coalition. So it's not a one-person party. It isn't the Nigel show.
Because where do you? I mean, you know a lot about Reform, Nick, from a personal perspective. I mean, you were part of Reform UK. Have you turned off the party in some way, or can you talk a bit about your personal experience there?
So I stood for Reform UK 4 years ago. They were a couple of weeks old, and I wanted to stand for Mayor of Greater Manchester. And Richard Tice was on TV going, and we're a new party. And I thought to myself, you've not got a candidate for Greater Manchester Mayor. So I texted him, he got back to me, and I stood for them. And then I stepped away from Reform. You couldn't even join Reform at the time. They were so new, they didn't even have a membership base. And then I've stood several times as an independent. I've not fallen out with Reform. I think they're doing some great work. Where do I stand now? The truthful answer is I don't know. I'm going to spend this Christmas now, deciding what is my next step. Do I look at Reform again? Do I join Reform? Do I not? Is there another party out there? Because I'm getting older now. I've probably got one or two more elections in me. I either make a stand now or I don't. And not making a stand isn't an option.
And are you worried about what some people see as Nigel's tack to the centre on issues like mass deportation, issues like not worrying about demography, issues of Islam, that sort of thing?
Do I see that as an issue? I don't see it as an issue today. They're not my views. Hence why I think we need a grand coalition. Because to beat Labour and the Tories in the next election, it takes more than some good PR. It takes more than Nigel being a good leader and a great speaker. It takes more than that. We've got to bring other people to the party. So Reform could have somebody as a spokesperson who's more along those lines of mass deportation, and then they take the flak. But yeah, I mean, I don't see how Reform can go forward and win with this fairly soft approach on mass migration.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But I guess what Nigel would say is just look at the polls. And I mean, we've got a new one here, just out. And what's interesting here, Nick, is that Reform are now below Labour, but just 1 point below Labour, but ahead of the Conservatives. So, whatever way you look at this, Nick, Reform has the momentum in British politics. And there are a couple of other things that I wanted to show you to get you to respond to as well, because there have been reports by Bloomberg that some Tory and Reform branches have held talks about unofficial pacts at May's local elections to unite right-wing voters against Labour, discussions about each side standing down candidates in certain wards. But Zia Youssef, the chairman of Reform UK, was incredibly clear on this. Let me be crystal clear, there will be no pacts. And then Farage has really turned on Kemi Badenoch, the new Conservative Party leader. I think for good reason, actually, but I just want to read you out what he has said specifically. I am watching the Tory backbenchers as Kemi Badenoch gives another average performance at PMQs. There is almost no enthusiasm for her at all. They are in much deeper trouble than they know. And this is what he was criticized for, though, where he said Kemi has no idea of what she is doing, no feel for the country, and no presence of delivery. And of course, it's those words, Nick, no feel for the country, that people are now hounding Nigel on, saying that's somehow racist. Of course.
Kerry Bednock refers to herself as an immigrant. She stood up in the House of Commons several times and referred to herself as an immigrant. She didn't move here till she was 16, even though she was born here. She left straight away. So has she got that feeling of the country? If this wasn't the country you weren't raised in, so that's a fair point. Did he mean it the way it sounded? Who cares? Who cares anymore if he's called racist, if he's called this? Because it doesn't matter what he says or does, he's going to be called a racist, a Nazi, a fascist. And I think Nigel needs to take a leaf out of Trump's book and stop trying to play for the mainstream media, attack the mainstream media, embarrass them, stop playing their game, stop trying to be the Tory party he wishes the Tory party was. Tory party is gone, they're done. He has to be careful because at the moment, the Tory party don't have to do anything. At the moment, the Tory party is going to win the next election because it's their turn, because Labour replaced them. Labour are doing badly. It's obvious Tories always replace Labour. It's up to him to win the election. It's up to him to show the people that he's not the Tory party. He's not just a different version of the Tory party, because we're sick of all of them. They've all taken us to bankruptcy. So we don't want any of them. He needs to show the country he has a new vision, just like Trump. Nigel Farage is a very clever man, obviously. I'm hoping he's got a plan. I'm hoping it's slowly. Let's get to the May elections. We'll do really well. Trump will be in office, and then our agenda comes through then.
I really hope so. That's what I keep thinking, Nick. I'm really thinking about that. I think I have a lot of trust in Nigel that even though at the moment he is absolutely tacking to the centre, that it is part of a softly approach. He knows what he's doing. He knows this is a long campaign. And I would say Nigel deep down in his heart actually feels a lot stronger in a lot of these issues than what he is advocating for publicly. But I totally agree. I've said it a lot. I want to see more of the Trumpian approach from Nigel, certainly when it comes to the mainstream media, who he seems to think are somehow going to turn around and treat reform fairly, which is just never going to happen. The problem that we've got is that you can see there's so many apparatuses of state designed to support a man like Humza Useless to cover up for his every personal failing by crying racism or crying Islamophobia when he is allowed to propagate anti-white racism without the slightest hint of pushback.
Absolutely. The milk in my fridge is white. The rice in my cupboard is white. He's a racist failed leader of the SNP. He was a diversity hire. He got the top job and he failed very quickly. And now he's looking for a new career. And his new career is going to be race baiting. His new career is going to be, I'm going to be king of the Muslims in the UK, if not Scotland. He's a racist. We know he's a racist. He's anti-white. We know he's anti-white. He's a really good example of our failed immigration policy, that we allowed people to move here, have children, not integrate, and hate the country they're living in. He's a disgrace. And when he says about GB News, I'm thinking of suing them, it's the word thinking. He's never going to sue anybody because people like him will never use their money for something like that. They're all about collecting money, not spending money.
But of course, Nick, what happens with that type of threat, with this type of report, is it allows the mainstream media to run coverage for days about GB News being racist, being anti-Muslim, rather than actually talk about, well, what were the sorts of issues that GB News was covering? Was there a complete failure by the mainstream media in this country for a decade to ignore to ignore the grooming gangs scandal,
Mm.
for example? And that's why someone like Tommy Robinson was silenced, his words, because they just were too scared to tackle something like that.
And that's why they invented the word Islamophobia, because Islamophobia is not about criticizing Islam, because we're all entitled to criticize other people's religions. Every religion thinks they're the religion, and by definition criticizes other people's religions. Islamophobia is all about power and control. I've got one of these special super words here. And if you say something I don't like, I'm going to call you this special super word. And that's going to shut you up. That's going to worry you. That's going to make your friends and your colleagues look at you a different way from tomorrow. It's all about power and control.
It is. But I do think it's changing for a couple of
Yes.
reasons, Nick, because I think about my experience over the past few years. Now, I was considered someone who was on the center, really, a
Mm.
common sense sort of guy. All of a sudden, over the past few years, I am derided as a far right person or a conspiracy theorist or something like that. But more importantly, I've been described as Islamophobic and anti Semitic.
Yeah.
So the point is that actually both sides are so quick now to use those sorts of insults that what actually happens, Nick, is that you just think, well, I can't worry about it anymore. Like, I'm a gay man who people call homophobic. This is
Mm.
idiotic. So actually, your insults have been devalued to the point where they are meaningless. And I would say Humza Useless trying to describe GB News as racist just totally derides his whole argument.
We need to get to a stage where we start laughing at these people.
Yeah.
Well, when they insult us, we just laugh at them. We don't get angry. We don't put complaints in about them. We don't try to sue them. We just laugh at them because they're fools. We know they're fools, and we just need to teach them that they know they're fools, because the days of hurty words have an impact on us now are gone. They've been gone for several years because they've been overused. Every one of those words had a meaning at some point, and was a word we probably needed at some point. But those meanings have gone for decades now. We're the most tolerant, non-racist, welcoming country in the world. In the world. And just as we're getting closer and closer to perfection in those terms, all of a sudden we're perceived to be, and we're called, and we're being taught we're the most evil, racist country that's ever existed. And you can't hold those two thoughts in your head at the same time. This is an amazing country with amazing people with amazing DNA. We created the modern world. We created everything. This world wouldn't exist without English people. And we shouldn't let these fools take that away from us with hurty words.
And I do want to get to why we should have that sort of pride in just 1 second. But the first thing I think that is also really important to tackle, Nick, because I completely agree, by the way, absolutely. I'm not trying to shut Humza Useless down. I'm not trying to sue him. I don't give a damn what he thinks about me. But I feel what I can do is shine some light on his complete hypocrisy and say, actually, mate, you're the racist. And that is completely the way that we should deal with this type of lunacy. And yeah, let's laugh. That is one of the reasons why I called him Humza Useless. I mean, he became First Minister of Scotland, Nick, despite having the worst record in government. He failed as the Scottish Transport Secretary. He failed as the Scottish Health Secretary. This man is a failure. So I did want to bring a little bit of humour to it, as I had an entertainment show, but there was also a serious point. It was certainly nothing to do with his race or his religion. But the chilling thing, Nick, and I think this is where we have to take it really, really seriously, is that his solution to this criticism is to shut us down, is to destroy free speech, is to empower a government censor, a government regulator. And if that doesn't work, then they start coming for the social media companies, the big tech companies. And it is quite chilling when we know that the government also agrees with that sort of approach. This is a government now that is pro censorship.
And let's be fair, the last government, 14 years, was also pro censorship. I need to remind people all the time, this isn't a Labour problem. This is the Uni Party problem. And we need to push back at these people. The Free Speech Union saved my life 4 years ago when I got
Yes.
cancelled from the charity I set up. You know, people need to join the Free Speech Union,
I'm a
get
member.
support. Is that you're a member?
And
Absolutely
I know they've
fantastic.
had an explosion of growth actually
Yeah.
since Alison Pearson's case, because I was speaking to someone from the Free Speech Union on Saturday night.
So there's things you can do to protect yourselves. But my philosophy now is I have no intentions of living my life on my knees. I'm going to stand on my feet. And if that means I have to take the consequences of my actions, and if that means I've got to be persecuted by the government and people like useless, then so be it. If it means I have to go to jail, which I do not want to go to jail, I'm not a big tough man who's trying to be a martyr, but I'm not going to live my life as a coward. I'm not going to be on my knees because it's been happening for far too long. And if everybody else stands up and gets off their knees, honestly, this government is afraid of us. They've already shown us they're afraid of us. We just got to take every opportunity to remind them that, do you know what? You're the public servant. You work for me, and I'm going to hold you responsible. And don't think that you can get away with breaking the law while you're in government, because the next government may be on our side, and we're going to come for all of you if you interfered in the criminal justice system, if you had a hand with these sentences. We're going to come for you. It may take a decade, but we're coming. We need to make sure they're afraid.
And then to go back to your previous point, Nick, but I think it's a really critical one, and I was discussing this with David Starkey recently too. We have to be proud of what we did in our past. We have to stop teaching our kids that the British Empire is a bad thing. In fact, we actually created the modern world and all of the brilliant parts of it. So what needs to happen to totally change our mindset? Because look, I know this is obviously after the British Empire in a lot of ways, but if you look at what's happened with Winston Churchill, I mean, he overwhelmingly just a couple of decades ago was voted the #1 greatest Britain in big polls by the British Bashing Corporation and Woke Channel 4. You know that just wouldn't happen now.
You destroy a nation by destroying its heroes.
Yes.
Because if a nation has no one to look up to, how are they ever going to fight back? And we're at war at the moment. There's many people who are enemies, internal and external, which I talk about in the book. We have enemies, and we need to be looking up to our heroes, and Churchill is one of those heroes. That's why in the book, one of the chapters is dedicated to our history, and I call it the forgotten history, because we're not taught it anymore now. We're not taught about how we beat the Nazis. The Nazis were socialists. People think the Nazis were far right. They weren't far right. They were socialists, just a different type of socialist. I talk about how most of the inventions, the most medicines, the vaccines of the world we created, the railways, the jet engine, the World Wide Web, almost everything came out of this island. The empire left, I would say, every country that we colonized, we left that country in a better state than when we found it. Hence why we had the Commonwealth, because we didn't leave those countries through war. We left peacefully, and those countries all said, can we just join together as a group now? The British Empire was amazing. We created the modern world. We gave the world our language. The world language is English. We've given the world all our sports. Football, rugby, snooker, nearly all the sports of the world are English sports. And we forget this. This world would not exist in the way it runs at the moment without this island. And we need to understand that. And we need to read about it. And we need to take pride in it.
Yeah, I am just looking at our live poll, Nick Buckley, and what I did is I put the 4 top issues that you pointed out in the promotion for your book. And I asked the Outspoken family, what is the biggest problem facing Britain? 1% say crime, 1% say unemployment, 9% say large state government interference. But I don't think you'll be surprised to know that 90% say mass immigration. And I guess the point is it's mass immigration, isn't it, which leads to all of those other problems. So very interesting, isn't it? But stand by, Nick Buckley, author of England, My England. Much more from you in just 1 minute time. And breaking right now, Beyonce and Jay-Z, who are already facing a wave of negative headlines because of accusations regarding an alleged rape, which Jay-Z strongly denies, are now having their parenting skills questioned after their 12-year-old daughter, Blue Ivy Carter, appeared on her first red carpet wearing a dress that many have found is inappropriate. Now, this young girl is starring in the Lion King prequel, Mufasa. I find it astonishing that she is 12 years old. Utterly astonishing. I couldn't believe it. And obviously, this has sparked huge concerns about our children just growing up too fast. Nick Buckley, the author of England, My England, posted on this saying, we need to be self-critical when we constantly over-sexualize little girls. Even Disney are doing it. Why does a 12-year-old girl need to have her bosom on display to sell a kid's film? And Nick Buckley joins me now. This is really interesting, isn't it, Nick? Because I was genuinely stunned to learn that Ivy Blue Carter was only 12 years old, looking like that. I'm also genuinely stunned when celebrities who know how evil the entertainment business is, and it really is a truly evil business. I covered it up close, as many people know, for 2 decades. And I find it astonishing that they want to put their young children through that. It's not because they need the money. I mean, we see that with the Beckhams, who are allowing their young girl to sell lipsticks and makeup products and already launch a TikTok. I mean, surely at least let them get to 18. And we know why she got this role, Nick Buckley. She got this role because she's the daughter of Beyonce and Jay-Z, not because of her God-given talent. But you were very concerned about this red carpet look. Why?
I am. For people who don't know my history, I've spent 2 decades working with children, and part of that was stopping child sexual exploitation. I've saved girls from being sexually abused. I've had offenders prosecuted, so I sort of know what I'm talking about in this field. This has been going for decades and decades and decades, over sexualizing girls. And it happens for many reasons. And it's happened so much that parents don't know they're doing it now. Parents are also responsible. So it starts off with these girls. You know, she's a 12-year-old child. She's not even a teenager. She's 12. But all her heroes, all the female pop stars, all dressed like strippers. So that's become normal for her to over sexualize herself. But the real issue here is the same reason why I wrote the book, the same reason why this country's failing. It's the failure of men. No man should ever allow his 12-year-old girl to dress like that. No father should ever allow that, regardless of what society tells him, regardless of what his wife tells him, and regardless of what his child wants. A man's job is to protect and provide. Jay-Z's provided for his children, fantastic, but he's not protecting her, is he? He's thrown her into a shark's den that's called Hollywood. Is allowing her to dress like a stripper, and this will end badly. Again, weak men are killing us. They're killing their children, they're killing the family, and they're killing our countries. And I make no apologies for that statement.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, this appearance on the red carpet, Nick, came in the same week that Jay-Z is having to deny allegations that he raped a 13-year-old. This is obviously all as a result of the P. Diddy papers. Now, he very, very, very strongly denies those allegations. But again, it just feels slightly odd, doesn't it? The timing of it all.
Oh, absolutely. And it's because he's blind to it. He's blind to the over sexualization of his own children. To him, it seems normal because if it didn't, he wouldn't do it. He's a strong man. He's a very wealthy man. He's a very big man. So if he didn't want something to happen, it wouldn't happen. But it's become normalized. And we're all guilty of this, all of us. We've all allowed it to happen to society. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, there was a craze in, not a craze, but I knew somebody who bought thongs for their 8-year-old daughter, and the thong had a picture of cherries on the front and it said, "Eat me." And she bought them
Oh,
for her 8-year-old daughter and thought they were cute. It made me want to vomit. This has been going on for a long time.
I don't, why would you want to sexualize your daughter? I mean,
Mm.
look, I looked at some of the comments though, and there's so many people who agree with you online, Nick. Cherie Denise said, lots of chatter online that Blue Ivy's dress is inappropriate, which I didn't get until I read that she is 12 years old. How about we don't put a 12-year-old in a push-up bra? Toria wrote, Blue Ivy looks beautiful, but honestly, I thought, wow, she's like 16 already. No, it turns out she is 12. Let a girl dress like she's 12, please. And then Corey wrote, Blue Ivy is a beautiful little girl, but she's a little girl, made to look much older than any 12-year-old. It's just far too mature of a dress. And Nick Buckley, I know it's not just Hollywood celebrities that you are concerned about when it comes to the sexualization of young women, because you sparked a bit of controversy the other day by posting Manchester. We have turned our young ladies into strippers and pole dancers. A dying nation with no morality promotes its women as sexual playthings. And you're referring to a specific video. Let's watch this video now. And Nick, I think maybe once people see it, they'll understand what you're talking about. But can you just explain what you mean?
Well, these ladies were a night out in Manchester, inappropriately dressed, if you ask me. Whatever happened to decorum? Whatever happened to less is more? Now, we've over-sexualized little girls, but we also over-sexualize all women in our society. And I had lots of people agree with me on that post, but I also had lots of people who disagreed with me. And my answer to them is, I'm the real feminist here because I don't judge women by what's under their clothes. I don't want to dress half naked to impress me. The most valuable thing about women is what's in their minds, their personality, their intelligence, their kindness, their compassion. That's what makes a woman beautiful. It isn't dressing half naked. I understand why those women are doing it, but the attention they attract and the men they attract by dressing like them are not the men you want being attracted to you. And we wonder why women are unhappy in our society. We wonder why 20% of all women in the UK are on antidepressants, because this modern feminism has sold them a lie that you can be the boss babe, you can be just as sexually promiscuous as men and you'll be happy. But do you know what? It's killing them. It's making them unhappy all the time.
I know, I can't even believe I'm talking about this, Nick, but it's gone mainstream. So I feel I need to. And this is a post from Samantha Smith, an incredible young woman who has been on Outspoken before. She was the victim of a grooming gang. And she's referring to this young woman called Lily Phillips. I don't know if you've heard of her, Nick, but
Yes.
she has had sex with 100 men in one day for her OnlyFans account. There's been a documentary made about it, which is just tragic because you can see that once she's done it, this woman who claimed that this was going to be empowering for her actually is just completely broken by the experience. And Samantha Smith writes, "This is so sad to watch. Judge and shame her all you want, but I know that girl. I was that girl. She has no self-worth and clearly thinks her only value is as a sexual object. She's killing herself slowly, and someone needs to step in before she hits the full self-destruct." But the issue with this, Nick Buckley, is that Lily Phillips has become a hero for lots of people because she is apparently making millions and millions of pounds.
She is, but who wants millions of pounds when your life has been destroyed? When you will never meet a decent man who will ever take you seriously, who will ever marry you, who wants your children, because what he sees basically is a prostitute and he sees it all online and everybody knows what you've done. Her life is ruined. Now, she's she's an adult, she's responsible for this. But let me go back to several other sections we've talked about now. Who's really responsible for that? Her father. Where is her father? I guarantee she came from a single parent household. I guarantee her father's not in her life because it's a father's job to raise his children right. And it's not just about raising boys, it's about girls. It's about showing girls that men can be dangerous, what men want. What men want off you isn't love, it's sex. They pretend it's love to get you to do what they want you to do. A father's job is to educate their girls on that so they can pick the good men in society. The men that women like her will call boring. But do you know what? He'll work 15 hours a day for you. He'll make sure you and the children are never hungry. He'll buy a house. He'll work himself to death and never abuse you. But yet women today call that man boring. That's a real man. That's a real father. But feminism is killing women and making them believe all this nonsense that sexual liberation will set them free. It's going to kill them.
It's interesting though, because Julie Bindel, the very well-known feminist, she has written for The Spectator today saying, shame on the men exploiting Lily Phillips, and writing any man involved in the torture of this woman should be locked up. Now, is that fair? Because that seems to be instantly placing the blame on the men and suggesting that they are committing some sort of crime. I mean, maybe it's a moral crime, but do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Julie Bindel always goes to where Julie Bindel goes, which is, I hate men. Everything is man's fault. That everything Julie Bindel writes, that's the meaning to everything she writes. So I take no notice of her. They're all young men. They're all 18, 19, the 101 men who slept with that woman. Are they to blame? To a certain extent, they have some responsibility there, because even though they're young men and they're getting to sleep with a nice looking woman, part of them should be saying, but I'm a protector. I should be protecting women in my society, in my community. And she's obviously damaged and she's broken. I should be protecting her. That's what they should be saying. This might be why she picks young men in their late teens, because they may not have developed that trait fully yet and don't understand. They're just looking at her going, free sex. And believe me, as a heterosexual male at 18, 19, free sex is a great deal. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's moral. But those men at some level should have been better men. They should have been, because that woman's broken.
Well, it's interesting because Tristan Tate, and some people have argued, well, he's not the best person to put forward this message, but he is now encouraging men to sign up to Lily Phillips's next challenge, which I sort of shudder to tell you is that she wants to break the world record in February by sleeping with 1,000 men in 24 hours. And Tristan Tate is now encouraging his followers to sign up, and when they enter the room, to try and pray with Lily Phillips.
when it comes to the Tate brothers, I don't know what to say. Um, Signing up to go in and pray. Do you know what we need to be doing? We need to be seeking out her parents. We need to be seeking out her extended family, and we need to be supporting them to do what they need to do. If they need money to get a flight to go see her, we should be funding that. We need her family, especially her father. Her father needs to man up and do something about this. I'll tell you what, if this was one of my relatives, this wouldn't be happening. I'd be in jail before this would be happening. So let's not be going there to pray. Let's be doing something realistic. Let's get her parents, her family, to take responsibility for this extremely damaged young woman who's on a road to hell and will end up possibly taking her own life over this in a few years' time.
Yeah, well, Tristan Tate, I'll just read you out exactly what he had to say on this. He wrote, "There are ways to combat this, and I am calling on all Christians to join a protest against this demonic action. You're a follower of mine. Here's what I would like you to do. One, there is an email address attached here. Please send your prayers and thoughts to this person, hoping they reach her before she ends up killing herself or something stupid," very similar to the point that you just made, Nick. "Or better yet, apply, get accepted, go undercover when it is your turn to violate her. Whip out an icon, a verse, a Bible instead of your penis, and interrupt this nonsense with prayer and well wishes. Change her mind in person and make this video impossible to watch or edit." So
if I was on a bridge threatening to jump off right now, passers-by would grab me. They would tie me to the bridge until the police and the ambulance came. They wouldn't let me jump. But you know what? We're all allowing her to jump, aren't we? We're allowing her to jump into hell, and no one is grabbing her and no one is tying her to the bridge so she can't jump. And for people who are celebrating this, that's what you need to understand. You're basically encouraging her to jump into hell. Shame on you.
very, very strong words, Nick Buckley, which I think most people will wholeheartedly agree with. So brilliant to have you back on Outspoken. Highly recommend. England, My England, which is available now, and presumably people can buy it via your social media accounts, Nick?
It's only available on Amazon because I self-published the book. I gave up the publishers. They're just a waste of space. So go to Amazon, just Google my name in it, Nick Buckley, MBE, England, My England, and you'll find it there. Paperback and Kindle. It's my best-selling book up to now. It's my fourth book, and it's already my best-selling book.
Well, I'm not surprised given everything that's going on. And of course, your podcast available too?
On YouTube, several times a week. You'll find it on Spotify and Apple. Just search for Nick Talks or Nick Buckley MBE. Some fantastic conversations I'm having on there.
Oh yeah, you go there. You go there. Let me
You're
tell you.
gonna have to come on it, Dan. You're gonna have to come on sometime for
Yes,
chat.
I would absolutely love to. I was watching your one the other day about Keir Starmer, and yeah, wow. You went there. You went there, Nick Buckley. So great to have you, Nick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.